I'm going to show you the cable cast on and the knit stitch. The cable cast on is very versatile and you can use it for many different types of projects, but it's a good one for beginners because it's very similar to the knit stitch. You'll need, if you haven't already done so, to purchase a ball of yarn, and I much prefer wool because it's very stretchy and that's probably the best for a beginner to start with. Buy it in DK weight or 8-ply. And you'll need a pair of knitting needles, and I always use circular knitting needles. They can take the place of any straight needles, and they're just really comfortable in your hands. Just to make sure that when you buy circular needles that the cable is nice and flexible and that there's no bump between the cable and the needle. So just feel that with your hand before you buy it. You'll also need to get a needle sizer, and this is because there's no marking on your circular needles, and this will tell you what size your needle is. In this case, I recommend you buy a 4mm, and you use this by putting your needle into the different sizes, and the last one it goes in is what that needle size is, so that's a 4mm. Now, there's two different methods, main methods of knitting. One is called the continental method, and in that method you hold the yarn in your left hand. The other one is called English, where you hold the yarn in your right hand. Now, both give you the same results. So I learnt to knit English first, and I'm more comfortable with that, so that's what I'm using today. To get your first stitch on the needle, you need a slip knot, and I use a modified slip knot. So I put it around my thumb, taking the tail of your yarn around your thumb, and drop that down there. Put your needle between your thumb and the yarn, pick up the tail between those two, then you pick up the loop in between, take your thumb out and just snug that up on the needle. So now you've got your first stitch. Now you take your working yarn that's coming off the ball and put it on the right side. You pick up your other needle, you put it through the loop. So now you've got two needles going in between the loop. Then you need to hold your yarn, and I believe this is really important that you get a good hold with your yarn, and this is the way I do it, which I think results in a very nice even tension, so it's worth trying this one at least. Just lightly hold the yarn with your thumb, draping it over your hand. Turn your hand over. Now take it around your little finger, underneath the next two fingers and over your index finger. Then you take the other needle, put one in your right hand and one in your left hand, and you're ready to start. You slip the yarn in between the two needles. Hold it down firmly, and you do tension it with your little finger. So hold it firmly, bring it down and pick up the loop that results there. Now get your left hand needle, come underneath that loop and slide it onto the left needle. You've now got two stitches. Now with your cable cast on, the next one you do, you actually put your needle in between the two stitches. So with your needle in between the two stitches, it's much the same action. Just slide your finger, you don't let go of your needle at all, just slide your finger up, hold that firmly, pull the loop between, pull it out. Take your left needle down through the loop you've made on your right needle, and then to finish you put your needle in between again, and this is so that you'll get a nice even tension. It needs to be firm, but it must also be able to slip up and down your needle. That's the sort of tension you need. So again, we just slip our finger up, take it off the index finger, between the two, push down, pick up the loop. No, that time it split, so we'll do it again. In between, through, push down, bring out the loop, in with your left needle, and finish by putting your needle in between. You're ready for your next stitch, sliding, pushing down, bringing out, underneath, needle between. Sliding up, pulling down, picking up the loop, down, in between. One more. Over we go, push down, pull out, in between. And that should give you a nice even tension for your cast on stitches. So continue practicing with your cast on until you can get a nice smooth even cast on. And we'll look at the knit stitch now. So you'll need about 30 cast on stitches, so I've done that already here. So just looking at that, we've got the tail at one end and your working yarn at the other end. So much like we did before, but this time we go through the loop for every stitch. So there's your first loop. You put your right hand needle through and just make it firm there. Again, you get your yarn hole going over your hand, turn your hand over the little finger, under, and just over your index finger. So now we're ready to go. And again, we go through, we just move our hand up and down the needle, we don't let go of the needle. We push it through like we did before, but this time I'm just using my right index finger to help pull it off. We pull that stitch off and you've done one knit stitch. Up through the loop, slide up, between, push down, bring your loop through, and then you drop it off. 2 knit stitches. Up through the loop, slide your fingers down, hold firmly with your little finger, push with your index, up and off, and that is the knit stitch. Through, over, down, off, through, over, down, off, through, over, down, off. So again, just keep practicing until you can get it nice and smooth. I'll show you what happens once you've done one row of knitting. Okay, so this is my cast on and I've done one row of knitting. This is the front because it's got a dip along here just between the cast on edge and the stitches, and it's smooth. And that's the characteristic of your knit stitch. On the front it's smooth, on the back it's bumpy. So that's the back where the bumps are. Now for a start we're just going to do knit every row. When you go to knit back, you'll find that you've got 2 pieces of yarn. One is your tail, and you don't want to knit that because you'll run out of yarn very quickly. So just make sure that's out of the way, and make sure that the first stitch is pulled downwards. Otherwise you might end up knitting an extra loop and you'll wonder why your knitting is growing sideways. Now again, we get our yarn hold organised, over, around, underneath, index finger, and we're doing our knit stitch again. So sliding your hand up, pushing down, putting onto the other needle. sliding your finger up there, in between, down and onto the other needle. And just watch that your hand doesn't actually drop your needle at all. Down, over, through. Through, between, down, over and off. So just practice your knit stitch until you're feeling really confident with it and you can make a nice smooth fabric. I'll just show you what a little bit of knit stitches looks like. This is what we call garter stitch fabric, and you can see this is the front side because you've got that little ridge going down the bottom there, but the back side is also the same. So garter stitch fabric has the bumps on both sides. Just keep practicing the knit stitch and then you can move on to the purl stitch, and those are the only two stitches you need for knitting.